It's 9 minutes after 8 o'clock here at WCDT. And Miss Helen Stapleton here with me this morning. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's spring.
No. It's fall spring.
I keep riding by laps and seeing that sign that's saying we open in March, and I just can't wait. Anyway, hi, you're listening to Common Sense Matters, and this is Helen Stapleton. And I just wanted to let y'all know that this is the Franklin County Democratic Party, and if you want to see our website, it's a long name, Franklin County, Tennessee Democratic Party.com. So it's all written out, nothing is abbreviated. Franklin County, Tennessee Democratic Party.com. We're also on Facebook as Franklin County TN Democratic Party, and Instagram, FCTN Democratic Party. So look us up there. We just had our spelling bee, and it was on President's Day this Monday, and it was a great success. We had lots of food, lots of families came out. Mariah Phillips was our MC. She led the spelling bee. I don't know if y'all remember her, but she ran for Congress maybe 4 years ago against Desjardins. Didn't win, of course, but she did a great job. And I wanted to announce our winners. So we had the young spellers. That was K through fourth. We had first place was Cullen Thompson. Second place was Benjamin Rudd, and his mom's on the school board, Sarah Marhevsky.
Okay.
Yeah, he got second place, and then third place was Julian Elrod. And then for our older spellers, which was fifth through high school, first place was Lucia Polanski. Second place was Maggie Lou Rudd, also our school board member's daughter. And third place was Callie Evie. And then we also had a spelling bee, an American history bee, and our winner for that was Al Barty. And it was a fun night. We're going to try and do it every year again. We used to do it every year, 1 year in Suwanee, next year down the mountain, just alternating. We hadn't done it since the pandemic, and we're just now getting that going again. So that was a fun event. Our next big event coming up is our party reorganization. So every 2 years we choose new officers, what time we're going to meet, all that kind of stuff. And that's going to happen on March 11th at the Franklin County Annex large meeting room. We need to fill our executive committee board, so we need one man and one woman from each of the 8 districts, the 8 county commission districts. So please show up for that. Doors open at 10:30, and then it's going to actually start at 11:30. You need to bring a valid ID with you, like the same ID you would bring with you to vote. So that's on March 11th, Saturday, at starting at 10:30, but officially starting at 11:30. So please show up for that. Run for office, or help choose who the new officers will be, and help us choose our course going forward. All right. So today we have.
I think it's actually online.
Okay. Good. Okay. So today we have a guest calling in. His name is Woody Register. He is head of the Roberson Project, and because it's African American History Month, we thought we would talk to Woody about his work at the Roberson Project. So are you on the line, Woody?
I am. I'm right here.
Okay. Can we hear him okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So, Woody, first of all, tell us about who Houston Roberson was. This is who the project was named after, and why the center was named for him.
Sure. I'm happy to do that. And first of all, thank you for having me on your show this morning. So, Houston Roberson came to Suwanee to teach in 1997. And when he was hired, he was the first person trained in African American history hired in a full-time position at the university. And what we like to say or remind people is that happened over 130 years after the end of the Civil War and after emancipation. Suwanee hired its first full-time and professionally educated African American historian. But Houston was also, after several years and making an important mark on the university community, he also was the first African American, the first descendant of American slaves to receive tenure at the university. So he was a history maker in a number of ways. Another important aspect about Houston was the role he played on campus. Someone who was admired and much loved by generations of students, and greatly respected and valued by his colleagues and members of the Sewanee community. So Houston had an impact in the classroom. He had an impact in the community, and of course he had a personal impact on many of us who worked with him. So Houston died in December of 2016, and we decided to name the project in his memory. One, to show our appreciation for all that Houston did in Sewanee, but also to inspire those of us who work with the Roberson Project, to inspire us to do the work we do and to follow his example of professional and expert scholarship and personal integrity.
He's looking over your shoulder.
A friend of mine, a very good friend of mine. I miss him every day, and it is especially meaningful and gratifying to me to say his name and see his image, his photograph, his face as often as I do with the work that the project undertakes.
Mm-hmm. So, and I forgot, tell us about you and what you do, what you teach.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, so I was Houston's colleague. I was already teaching at Sewanee in 1997 when he joined the faculty. And I've been teaching U.S. history in a variety of ways and from a variety of perspectives for more than 30 years at the university. And then I took on this project to direct the Roberson Project. I took on that job a little over 5 years ago in 2017. And I will be continuing in that for the foreseeable future. But I've taught courses all across American history and American studies for more than 3 decades.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So tell us a little bit about Sewanee's history with slavery. I mean, I don't think it's any secret that it's very entwined, right? So what have been the major findings of the research y'all have done?
So, in some ways, Sewanee's history with slavery is no surprise and no secret. It was founded, or the campaign to found the university began in 1856, the summer of 1856. And it was one that developed, one could say, in the shadow of the great divisive debates about the future of slavery in the United States. But it goes even beyond that. So, people have been telling the university's story for 160 plus years. And it's been done by non-professionals as well as professional historians. But all have, even the best of these accounts, the most reliable of these accounts, have struggled with how to tell the story of slavery or tell the story of the university in relation to slavery. So they tend to either omit slavery altogether as a factor in the founding of the university, or to give it some quick attention and then move on as something that was there at the beginning but didn't really have an impact on the university's development for the next century and a half. So what we started to do 5 years ago was to investigate whether this this kind of writing about Sewanee, these kinds of stories we tell about Sewanee, gave adequate attention to the significance of slavery. And we determined very early on that it did not. That is, that slavery was really not just on the edges of the effort to found the university, but at the very center. The men, your listeners may not know this history, but the leaders of the Southern Episcopal Church were the principal forces behind founding this university in the 1850s. And they did so because they wanted to build a church institution, a church university, owned by the Episcopal Church and reflecting what they regarded as true religion at the time. So the emphasis in the university story has always been on the church part of it. But what has been left out or not given adequate attention is the degree to which these church leaders, these bishops of the Episcopal Church, the priests, the lay leaders in the individual parishes, were concerned that they needed to build an institution that would vindicate the South's peculiar institutions, in particular its reliance on enslaved labor and its plantation-based economy, that would vindicate that in the eyes of the nation and the world. So slavery wasn't on the edges of what they were doing; it was at the very center.
Yeah,
as they called it, they were building a university, and these were their words, for the land of the son and the slave. To be a university for that area and to give that region from North Carolina to Texas, a powerful cultural statement and institutional support for the Southern way of life, which had slavery, and for them at least, at its center.
And I had always heard that the sons of the planters were going up to Harvard and Yale and places for college, and they were getting all these radical abolitionist ideas. And then they would come home and, see their father holding slaves. And so they wanted a school that would be just as good as Harvard and Yale, but without all the abolitionist ideas. Is that just a rumor, or is there any historical proof of that?
Yeah, there is. That was certainly a concern of theirs, that their sons were headed to colleges in the North, and there they were exposed not just to abolitionist ideas, but to abuse from other students and instructors because they came from slavery backgrounds.
So they wanted a quote-unquote safe space.
What's that?
So they wanted a quote-unquote safe space for their kids.
Yes, and they wanted a safe space that would teach the truth about slavery and would not be filled with these garbage ideas, this fanaticism, these harebrained theories about the horrors of slavery or the injustice of slavery or any of that nonsense. They wanted the truth about slavery and only that truth to be taught. And so this was very much at the center of their concerns. And so it would not have been a university of free and open inquiry, but only free and open inquiry into the established truth, which was, as they stated clearly, that God had created slavery for a purpose, and that purpose was to uplift a degraded and inferior people into the true light of Christianity, and that the enslaved people were a trust from God in the benevolent and paternalistic and caring hands of white Southerners. And so when you criticize slavery as they saw it, you were criticizing God's will. And as they put it, that was infidelity, that was fanaticism. So they would not have allowed any contrary ideas to be introduced except to refute. So yes, it was not. It was about teaching an established truth, but also about strengthening the acceptance of that truth about slavery as a benevolent and Christian institution.
Well, I went to high school in the South, in Louisiana, Catholic school, and I definitely probably got the kind of education that they would have wanted. I mean, I did not learn about anything to do with African American history, and I'm so glad that there's a month devoted to it now, because I knew nothing about redlining. I knew nothing about Emmett Till. I learned nothing about the GI Bill being denied to black soldiers. I knew nothing about the Tulsa riots. All these, the Black Wall Street. I didn't learn about any of that at all, and so I got the most unwoke education you ever heard of, and so I'm curious how going forward. I know that the Roberson Project, is it only supposed to be around for 6 years?
No, it'll be around. It is. It has a 10-year designation.
Oh, okay,
We're
okay.
in the middle of the 5th year now.
Okay, so you're halfway through. So, what do you want with all this research that you've compiled? What is the goal going forward with that? Like, I hope that kids growing up today don't get the education that I got. I mean, I know that that's dealing with high school and elementary school, but I'm talking about going forward, at least in colleges. What kind of education do you hope the students at Sewanee and other schools will get, but maybe based on the research that y'all are doing?
Yeah, well, I should say that the work we're doing here at the university is not unusual in this day and age. There are many other colleges and universities that are subjecting their own histories to the same kind of investigations right now. So we're part of a growing movement in higher education. But I think what binds us all, or what connects us all in this kind of a research project is one, just acknowledging these aspects of about our past. At the University of the South, the university's deep connections with the antebellum order, that is the social order that dominated before the Civil War, its deep connections with the Confederacy, the civilian and the military leadership of the Confederacy, its conception as a university for the South. That was a source of pride at this university, into the 1980s, and you can still see that pride today. This was nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, it was something to boast about. That especially that the leaders of the southern region before the Civil War and after the Civil War, had connections to this university. So the Old South, the Lost Cause, those were part of the boasting points that Sewanee's students and faculty shared for many generations. So, what we're doing, I think, is making this more. We're trying to ask people to think more about the aspect of Southern life that gets omitted in these kinds of tributes to the lost cause and tributes to the antebellum order, and that's the centrality of slavery.
Well, okay.
So,
sorry.
Yeah.
So on that topic, I'm just curious. This is a show mainly, for all of Franklin County. What are your thoughts on the rebel mascot at Franklin County High? Do you think that's another form of glorifying that past, or do you think it's harmless?
My limited understanding of the history of the rebel mascot at Franklin County High, granted here, I think what's important in that situation with that mascot, as well as many other, especially high schools across the region that adopted the rebel mascot for their teams, I think what you have to ask, or what you have to investigate, are the circumstances of how that mascot came to be adopted. And most of them were adopted during the 1950s or early 1960s, and they were done so as a way of expressing white resistance to the civil rights movement. White resistance to, especially, or defense of local autonomy, of state, states' rights, etc., against what many white people saw as the encroachments of the federal government, of the national government, on the established ways of life of this region, which included racial segregation and, frankly, white supremacy. So that's what you want to find out: is how did the Confederate, how did Dixie come to be played at high school events? High school bands were not. You don't even have high schools in the 19th century for the most part in places like Franklin County. You don't have marching bands. You don't have fight songs. When did those expressions of white Southern pride get adopted? And that's when I think you begin to get into the harder questions of whether they appropriately reflect the values and the priorities and contemporary understandings of justice. So that's where I would go with whether you're talking about the Franklin County mascot or the mascot of the University of Mississippi, and as well as all the other high schools. How did this come apart?
Yeah, like a lot of the monuments that we see didn't get put up until the civil rights movement, right?
Yeah, and these were political acts, and understanding those politics, and then figuring out, having an open conversation today about whether whether these mascots are in line with one's understandings today. I think those kinds of conversations need to occur. They need to occur at our university too. So, and that's what the Roberson Project is about. We don't prescribe what to be done in these instances. What do you do about Confederate memorials? What do you do about mascots and other such holdovers from an earlier era? But we try to inform the conversation, try to provide the information that helps us understand how these things came about, and then to prepare people to engage in the necessary conversations today. So I have personal opinions on these kinds of matters, but I don't have a Roberson Project opinion on them, except that we believe these conversations need to happen. These choices need to be made today, and then we can see what we think about the choices that are made. So that would be and I'm sure that people at Franklin County High have engaged in these investigations.
Okay, so we only have about 5 minutes left. So just tell us really briefly the different things that y'all are researching. I know y'all have done a lot of research about the African American community in Sewanee. I know there's a lot about the funding of the university and where those funders came from. So just tell us, just really, we've only got about 5 more minutes. What are all the different aspects of, or the different things that y'all are focusing on in your research?
Yeah, well, we have a growing array of projects underway, but in general they fall into two camps. Into two areas. One has to do with what I've been talking about mostly this morning, that is the history of the university in relation to slavery and Jim Crow and the lost cause. So that's understanding the university's history better. But the other has to do with what you just mentioned, Alan, and that's to reverse the inattention or the disregard or even disdain for African American history and by the university, to restore African American history to our understanding and to our understanding of this university. And in this respect, it's not just about the black community here at Sewanee. The black community in Sewanee was closely tied to black communities throughout the county, in Deckard, in Winchester, in Belvedere, in Estill Springs. So Sewanee's story of black history, which we are working very hard to recover and preserve, it's very much a Franklin County history. So our projects in this area are really framed within a regional perspective, or what we call the Black South Cumberland. This area of Marion and Grundy and Franklin County, and even down into Alabama, all deeply connected by family ties, by neighborhood connections, that make this really one history of the region. So that's what we're trying to do is work with other groups like the Townsend Cultural Center in Winchester, or another group, the Asia School Restoration Project, to make these histories better known and to preserve them.
So if people
so that we diversify and make more inclusive our understanding of this area.
Okay, so if people listening have something at their house, like an old letter or an old picture that they would like included in the record, can they contact you and have that added?
We're looking to people who have photographs, family albums, Bibles, any kind of memorabilia that is, an aspect of African American history and experience in this region. And we would love for them to share, not to give us what they have, but to share it so that we can make digital copies of those items. We don't want to take their items. We want people to be able to keep them, but to lend us an image of them, and then we'll put this in our online archive.
Okay, and how
blacksewanee.org is the web address, blacksewanee.org, and we have an online archive there. So yes, they can contact us at robersonproject@sewanee.edu. That's our email address.
Okay. Well, Woody, thank you so much for meeting with us. I'm going to have to end the show here, but thank you so much. So that's robersonproject@sewanee.edu?
Yes.
Okay. And then how would they see the archives online again? Can you give that address?
Yes, it's blacksewanee.edu.
Okay. And that's
blacksewanee.org, O-R-G.
Okay, blacksewanee.org. And that includes things from the rest of the county too, not just Sewanee? Or is it mainly just Sewanee?
Principally Sewanee now, but we will be enlarging that perspective in the coming months.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Woody. I really appreciate you being with us.
It's a pleasure, Helen.
Okay, bye-bye. All right, thank you so much. And that was Common Sense Matters. And our next meeting is going to be March 11th. That's a Saturday at the Franklin County Annex at 11:30. But try and get there early to get registered. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Big Al Radio. The longer you listen, the later it gets.